Hello class. So this is my second video now showing you some basic analyses in SPSS. And this one is focused on a question that Kenna had about online learning and how it may or may not be related to students' thoughts about dropping out or propensity to drop out. So I'm going to start with looking at some means, because for some of you, you might just focus on looking at means and ranges, and that is completely fine. You may not do any inferential statistics at this time. And again, that is completely fine. So I want to show you how to do that. So I'm going to share my screen. And okay. So first thing is you want to go back to your research question. What question did I ask? What am I interested in? And then you're going to go to the items in your survey that help you answer your research question. And for Kenna, she was part of a team that asked a lot of questions on a survey. And so she wants to just focus for right now on the questions that asked about online learning. So I'm going to go to SPSS right now. And in our file, we have several variables. Let's see, I'm going to go to variable view for the moment and look at the variables that focused on online learning. And so first, she asked, have you taken an online course? Yes or no? And then for those who said yes, there were 4 questions that asked things on a Likert type scale. For example, have you felt more motivated completing coursework online? Let's see, I feel or felt more motivated to complete coursework in my online classes than in my in-person classes. Or I worked hard in my online classes than in-person. I felt less distracted in my online. I think taking online courses makes obtaining my degree more possible. So all of these questions are measuring somebody's, let's see, let me say this a different way. If someone put high numbers on these questions, it would show that they kind of liked the online classes more. They were motivated by them more, they were less distracted in them, and so on. Lower numbers suggest that they did not think the online classes were better for motivation and distractibility and things like that. So that's actually an important thing you want to think about, like what do high numbers mean for this item? What do low responses mean on the Likert type scale? So, so when you have that clear in your mind, you can then look at the means, because then you can interpret them a little bit better. So to do means, we're going to go to Analyze, and we're going to go to Descriptive Statistics, and we're going to go to Descriptives. And I actually just ran this a minute ago, so, but I can take these out to just show you from the very beginning. So you'll get this sort of box, and you have to go and find your classes, or sorry, your variables. And so I'm going to pick, and you can pick multiple ones. So I'm going to pick all of the online classes items. And I just click the little arrow to get them over here. And that's really all I have to do. I can click OK now. Now, I'm going to hide this for a moment. We see this box that has each of our items here, tells us how many participants responded to that item. And so this allows us to check to make sure everything's correct in terms of the number of participants. And it looks like it might not be, but it is, because this first question was, have you ever taken an online course? Everybody responded to that, but then only the people who said yes responded to the other questions. Then you see the minimum and maximum, I think that's the minimum maximum response, or it might be the minimum maximum possible. And then our all important mean and standard deviation columns. So again, this allows us to get a sense of what we saw, of what we're seeing in the data set. Now, it's not a huge number, 31, so we don't want to make a huge deal about it, but you can see these numbers are fairly low. Remember that this scale went up to 5. And so they're all below, oops, this one's not one of the online learning questions, so ignore that one. But all of these are below 3. 3 was the midpoint. And so that's very, very interesting with a relatively low standard deviation. So if the standard deviation is relatively low, that means the answers are all bunched together. People were all fairly similar in their response. And actually, we could run a histogram to see what it looks like. Let's see if I can do that relatively quickly. Graphs, chart builder. We want to do a histogram. And so we drag it over here. And then we tell it what we want to be there. And that's the have you ever taken. We don't want that. Let's see, we could do the motivation. Is that going to work? This is suggesting that people only answered mostly untrue and mostly true. Mostly untrue, mostly true. What? Okay, now this is making me want to do a frequency count. So let's go out of here for a moment. Now we ran a mean. We did means here. So this does sometimes cover up exactly what the responses were. So if we go to analyze, we go to descriptive, we go to frequencies. That was the motivation course, a motivation question. Let's see, I felt more motivated. Just for fun, let's see what this shows. Okay, that graph was a little bit off, and I need to work on that one because what we're seeing is that this is telling us exactly how many people responded to each item. Mostly true was a 1. There were 11 people who gave that answer. 2, not every number was labeled, but 1 was mostly untrue. So this is somewhat untrue, I guess. 7. 3 would be neutral. 6 people answered that. More true, 3 people said, and mostly true, 4. So people did answer all across the spectrum, and we do not have a mean on here, that's fine. We go right back up here and we see the mean was 2.42. So this is interesting. Because it is showing us that there is a fair amount of variability in the responses. And when you take all of those numbers, you still get a mean that's below the midpoint. So it would be interesting to make a graph in, what I would recommend doing is making a graph in Docs. I can show you how to do that. Representing all of the responses, but showing that the mean was 2.42. And then the hard part, the challenging part, doable, but challenging, is interpreting this. What does this mean? And we don't know exactly, and we're going to make some guesses. I'm going to leave that for you to think about a little bit, and then I will talk about it with you after you've thought about it. But that's the next step, is to say, okay, so I got these means. What does it mean for my question? So that is half the story, is the online learning. Then we want to see how might this be related to dropping out or thinking about dropping out. So another analysis we could do is looking at, let's see, I'm getting distracted by all the voices in my house. What we could do is take whether someone has taken an online course or not as kind of a quasi-IV and seeing if there's any variation in terms of their thoughts about dropping out. Is it that people who have taken online classes maybe are not as connected to the university and are thinking about dropping out more? Let's run that. So that would be an independent samples t-test, because we have two groups: the people who said yes to having taken an online class, the people who said no. And we're going to take the means of the people who said yes and compare it with the means of the people who said no on the means of their thinking about dropping out. Let's see, I don't know if that made sense, but maybe it will be as I run it. Okay, so I've got the independent samples t-test. And again, I ran this earlier, so I have that there, but I can show you from the beginning. So this is what you'll see. So you take have you ever taken an online course? That's going to be our grouping variable or independent variable. Put it over here. Very important. We've got to define the groups. And so you have to know how you labeled yes and no. So in this case, I know that we labeled no as 1, yes as a 2. Okay, and then we're going to get our dependent variable, which is thoughts about dropping out. We've got a few different questions like that, so I have to look for it. Okay, how often do you think about dropping out? And then we also have how likely is it that you will drop out? Let's see, I want both of those. And then we even have how likely is it that you will drop out for non-academic and for academic. Okay, so I can put all of those in the test variable area, and then I can hit OK. Okay, so first thing, we do want to look at the means, just to get a sense of what we're going to see down below. So for example, how often do you think about dropping out? That was our independent, our quasi-IV. We have yes and no. They took a mean of that, but that doesn't make any sense because that was a categorical variable. How likely is it that you will at some time, I'm sorry, how often do you think about dropping out? According to yes, I've taken an online class, or no, I have not. So you see that the people who have taken an online class their mean's higher. We don't know if it's statistically higher. And their standard deviation is a little bit wider. So there's a little bit more variation in that group that responded yes, they had taken an online course. And so it's in the direction of this idea that people who have taken online courses are more likely, potentially more likely to have been thinking about dropping out. But we'll have to see if it's statistically significant in a moment. My computer looks like it's not happy. Okay, how likely is it that you will at some point drop out? And you can see this number is very, very low, which means the students, they said very unlikely that they would. And so these are virtually identical, 0.19 and 0.21. A t-test is not gonna say that those are significantly different. Similarly, with how likely is it that you will sometimes drop out for non-academic reasons? A little bit higher than the main will you drop out, but for the purposes of our t-test, for the yes, no on taking an online class, virtually identical. And this little guy's in my way, and so I can't see, and my computer's wigged out. So I'm not gonna be able to move this around. And so, I am just looking at the significance values down here and I'm not seeing anything yet, but, and my guess is the bottom are gonna show that there isn't anything significantly different here. So again, the interpretation of this, we see no differences between people who have and have not taken online classes on their thoughts about dropping out or the likelihood that they would drop out. We're also seeing very low means for the people who have taken an online course about whether the online class was something that they thought was more motivating than in person. So there's a very interesting story that's emerging here. So let's think about this and talk some more.
Mom,
Mm-hmm.
are they going to send a message saying,
Hold on.
your kid is so cute?